we have not mentioned it, there is a grant. So that's coming out of CDE in cooperation with the Chancellor's Office and Tim Rainey's office at that Workforce Investment Board. We've formed a collaboration to structure that grant in such a way that it serves all of our needs, and we're trying to demonstrate our collaboration at the state level because that's what we're asking you to do at the local and regional level. And so we're hoping to have that grant to come out shortly after the first of the year. We know you're busy over the holidays and you have no time to write a grant like that, so we thought we'd wait till after the first of the year. So that'll come out the first of the year, and then we'll give you, applicants will have about 90 days to apply and submit those grants, and they'll come back to our office, and then we have a whole structure for scoring those grants, and we're hoping to award those grants by June 30th so that we've encumbered all of that money and then make the announcements, and so that the successful applicants will start spending money July 1st of 2014. And should let you know that those grant funds actually must be fully expended by June 30th of 2018. So you have time to expend those funds. One of the things that we'll find in the grant application, we're just trying to make the final adjustments to that grant, but one of the things we're working on is that successful applicants will not receive all their money up front. They'll receive a certain portion of that money up front, and then we plan to wean you off of our money, because as you'll see in the application, these programs that you're gonna form in your regional areas are expected to be self-sustaining, so over time. So rather than just give you money and cut you off, we're gonna give you some money and then wean you off of our money in hopes that, and we know that startup costs, equipment costs, professional development activities, training for staff, those kind of things are really costly, and those happen up front. And that other sustainability costs are a little bit less expensive, so we've structured that into the grant. And then we will have readers from not only CDE, but community college and the WIB are going to help us score and read those. So it's going to be a good cross-section, I think, of how those will be scored and so forth. Okay, so I just thought I'd start it out, and do we have any comments, final comments, Bob?
Are those people standing in back? They look like they're getting ready to rush the stage. Is this a danger here? What?
If you just keep every once in a while say something about the Career Pathways Trust application, then they won't leave. Well, I mean, I had the chance to stop by all of the breakouts afterwards, and I was impressed by the level of engagement. Yeah, Josh's was great. Yours was good too. I think one of the part of what I was struck by with some of the questions, which I think will be relevant both for this trust but also for Youth Career Connect and everything else, is this the inflection point that we're at, and the where we often in many parts of this work used to think of it as what was for the kids that weren't headed to college. So we developed this as this is for kids who don't learn in the regular way, and as Nancy said in her session, that turns out that that's almost everybody. But this is a fundamentally different frame, which is this is about making this. We've learned so much from the academies that are here and the employers that are here over the last several years that this really is powerful, and that it's powerful for a broad range, if not most, students. And so the trust was created with the notion that how do we start to deliver this for all students, make it an opportunity at least for all students. That means that it can't just be the way we did it before. And so I was impressed in Josh's session around the notion that you need an intermediary to do this work. And in Nancy's, you can't just go and do dual enrollment by having one teacher talk to one college faculty member and get their course certified. And it's hard. I think for a lot of folks in the field, it's a hard adjustment to make, because they saw the $250 million as an example and said, "Oh, good, I can get money to my partnership academy is expiring in 2015. I can get money to make it last for another 2 years." That's not the strategy here. Or we have 27 pathways in my district, and we're hoping to add 27 and a half pathway with this money that will then expire in 2018. Or we already do a good job, and why don't you just invest a little bit more in what we're doing today? Or I'm already working on work-based learning. If I just had one more person on my team, I could double the number of internships that we're doing, all the way from 25 to 50 in my district of 12,000 kids. And so this opportunity is also a challenge to us to not think about it as how do we do just a little bit more of what we were already doing, or work a little bit harder at what we were doing before, bring one more partner to the table, but fundamentally rethink at the system level and at the regional level how this can become real and possible and embedded in the work-based learning as well for most, if not all, kids.
So I just add that, this is $250 million, so it sounds like a lot of money. But we're also in a large state. And as Chris said, the money can't really fund what you're currently doing. This is a whole different shift, and that was what today and tomorrow and Thursday are all about, is forming that mindset and these regional partnerships and making this really happen for our students. And so, one way I think that Darrell Steinberg described it is, think of this as economic development through education. And I told you earlier that we really don't want you in your partnerships to be engaged in the effort, but we want you to be married to the effort. So it's a whole different level of commitment that you ever made. And what I've told other people, it's not about the money, right? It's about this work and doing this work in this way. And think about this. If we don't do this right, then the legislature is going to say, we just invested $250 million and you couldn't pull this off. Why would we give you more, right? So we're asking for those grant applicants to turn in strong proposals that address that need for the regional economy and actually the economy of those individual students, because it's about their economy as well. And so that's what we're looking for in your grant applications.
And I would just like to say that, when we talked about in my session, is just think about it as you're convening, you're measuring, you're brokering, you're assessing, but then you also have to show the gains you've made. So don't forget about measurement, and that's been talked about a lot. And think about, as an intermediary, you want to make life as easy as possible for these businesses, for these kids to really be successful, and for the teachers that are working with these kids to grasp and think differently about who they're sending out and what skills they need. And the intermediary would help you do that. So you wouldn't have to have a teacher scrambling for internships and jobs or job shadows. Someone else would be thinking about that, but then also doing a good data share so that we can make things and grow things so that we can get another 225 million or whatever it would be. I might move to California. That sounds great. But that's what we're... Oh, I thought it was all for me. No, but that's something that we, in our session, we really talked about employer account managers and their role, and the career specialist working with the kids, but also looking at measurement and moving kids on and thinking about when we're working with kids in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, and then what they're doing, because in my session, someone said, in exit surveys, every kid seems like they're going to college, but life happens. So we have to think about what that looks like. And so this is really exciting to be here and see all these people really enthused about this.
So I have one sort of more on the philosophical side comment, which relates to what Josh had to say, and which I didn't say before, but in some fundamental way, the shift is really acknowledging the role of work in human lives. And that's when you look at those youth unemployment numbers, and when you think about times when you've had precarious employment, and I'm sure many people have, that does a real job on your identity. And we are going to lose a whole generation of young people if they don't get work experience, because work experience is what is, in a sense, their initiation into a productive adult life. And so I think it's really important to think about that, and to think on the other side. The work experience takes some of the burden off teachers, who are often the adults who pay attention to kids, but other people don't. And if you're in a work setting, in an intergenerational setting, then you see multiple adults doing multiple kinds of jobs, and it has got to have a really transformative effect on the commitment that you make to yourself to move on into adulthood. And that, I think, is a really, really critical, foundational way of thinking about what we all need to do for the 14, 15, 16-year-olds coming along.
piggyback on that. I think one of the things that really changed I until I really had a chance to spend time inside a pretty intensive week that Nancy and I and Susanna Cooper here and a few others had to spend looking at the Swiss system. I had always kind of operated on the premise that until kids were 18 or 19 or 20, it really was not realistic to expect employers to invest in them, and that's certainly very much the American model. Most American employers are understandably kind of skeptical about getting too engaged with high schools or with high school age kids. They haven't settled down. We know all the things you can say about adolescence. But what really turned me around was seeing at scale 16 and 17-year-olds in a variety of different kinds of work settings really just kind of coming alive. And largely that was because of the incredible amount of support that they got from adults, but seeing kids rise to the expectation of adults and seeing them introduced to the work world when they're still very much in a kind of formative stage and their identity is getting formed, and catching kids before they've developed a lot of negative bad habits and attitudes about work when they're still in this kind of, fresh-eyed kind of stage was really very, very striking. The other comment to make, and this is not at all a knock on the wonderful employers who are here, but the scale issue was really striking. When Nancy mentioned Credit Suisse, where we were the last day in Zurich, Credit Suisse has 750 16 and 17-year-olds in their banking operations. That's a tenth of their workforce. They call them young professionals. They are seen not as students, but as young professionals. And because of both the expectations and the support, that's how it is that by the third year, the companies are getting back more in increased productivity than they are spending on either the wages of the kids, the wages and the training costs associated with them. So kind of aspiring to a world in which, as Christopher said, our bias is pretty clear here. Based on what we've seen elsewhere, we think these systems need to grow to become mainstream systems serving most kids. And if you go back to the statistics that I cited at the beginning of my presentation, it's pretty clear that in a world in which the returns to skills and credentials are rising almost by the minute, unless we've got a strategy to get many more kids skills and credentials that have value in the workplace, these kids are going to be starting off their kind of adult lives at a huge, huge disadvantage. And we as a society will pay the long-term costs, but more importantly, the long-term costs in kind of thwarted hopes and dreams on for kids. That has serious social and human consequences that we've got to do what we can to avert. So, there's a message here is kind of, it's a kind of schizophrenic message in a sense. On the one hand, we need to have a much stronger sense of urgency about the importance of this work, but we also at the same time need to understand this is long-term system building work. This is not going to happen overnight. This isn't like simply scaling up an existing program or project. This is really building a system that over time can be the system that serves most kids.
So in your grant application, please don't write in a trip to Switzerland for you and your staff. So I think we have a few minutes left. So, and I think the folks that are up here are willing to take a few questions if we have any. Does anybody have any questions for us? We have one way in the back. I saw the hand go up right away. So use your teacher voice.
I'll use my teacher voice. I'm wondering about the position of trade unions in Switzerland, because often when we try to hire young people, we get the union is going to, tribalistic.
Yeah, so I think there are two. There's the Swiss answer, and then Josh will give you a U.S. answer. So the Swiss, German, these systems are all run by what are called the social partners, and the union is a social partner. And the unions see this as a way of creating a new membership. This just isn't an issue. I don't know what you want to say about your experience.
So similarly in Boston, we work with the unions. So we are partnered with them. So for example, in my session, we talked about Aramark, which runs the Red Sox food service and catering and all that stuff. 20% of their staff is PIC students. They are all union paying due members. So we talked to the union said, we'd love to have the kids. We also see them as future union members. As long as they're working on site, they have to pay dues. Now, these kids get so much money, they get paid so much that they don't miss the 50 cents an hour that's taken out of their check. But we also explain to them what being part of the union means. So that's one example, and the other unions do the same. They see these kids, as not only union members or future union members, but this is an educational experience for them, and we partner with them just like any other employer, and they've been wonderful.
This is a really good example of why the partnership with the workforce investment boards is so critical. And not that sort of partnership is, okay, we've designed the whole career pathway, we got 2 employers, and our whole school, our entire district came together, and we even learned how to speak community college for a day, and we got them to the table. So we've designed the whole system, and then we went to the WIB and said, we'd like you to be on the committee or something. But no, from the beginning, where the WIB is really helping to drive this, because they, just like the Boston PIC is a WIB, they have this experience already. And and the WIBs all have union representation on them, and so they've gone through this before. And so rather than trying to learn all of the union politics and all of that from a district perspective, to really rely on the partnership with the local and regional WIBs, I think is a really powerful strategy.
I think one difference is that in European countries, many times the apprenticeships are not only blue collar or come out of the trades, but they're white collar apprenticeships, which we don't in America really look at. We don't really have apprenticeships that are white collar apprenticeships. So if you look at this from a different perspective, there's no reason we couldn't have white collar apprenticeships going on, and we should. So it's a different perspective. Any other questions? Fred?
More of a comment. I represent teachers of OGED, Career Tech, and I tell you, there's about half of them are really excited about the grant, and then the old timers see something different. And I'll tell you what the old timers see. They've been giving kids marketable skills, some of these guys, for 30, 35 years in the classroom. They've won a Cold War, they've created an industrial revolution, et cetera, through traditional career tech. Now they're seeing in the same budget that takes away $384 million of ongoing ROP money at the time that these grant dollars would kick in. For one-time dollars to try to put enough bells and whistles on their programs to excite policymakers about something they've been doing successfully for 30 years. And so I'm just telling you, there's a mixed feeling. I think the old-timers' perspective is going to be the one that wins out. And there's a lot of them that don't have grant writers in their district. Some of these are rural districts. So I'm just letting you know, we've seen a very rosy picture about this one-time $250 million allocation. But it comes at an ongoing cost that far transcends it every year in the budget starting in 15, 16. And whether ROPs are the greatest delivery model or not, and I can argue both ways, almost every career tech program is dependent on those dollars. And so I don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. I don't know if there'll be enough bells and whistles attached to career tech to excite Sacramento. But it just seems odd that we're celebrating a one-time grant when in the same budget we wiped out nearly $500 million of ongoing career tech dollars.
So everybody's looking at me. So, I guess one comment I would make is when the ROP money, there was a requirement for a maintenance of effort to happen with that ROP, right, for 2 years. So the ROP money, as of today, and for the next 2 years, is not gone. That money still exists. This money is on top of that, right? So now we have 2 years, and this is coming from an old-timer, voc ed guy. If you look at the hair, I mean, that's where I earned my bread and butter for many years, teaching construction. And that's what I did. And so I understand their concerns. I don't know that I have the right or a answer for that, but we do have 2 years to try to bring that money back and this money. As you heard from Darrell Steinberg today, I think he's interested in making this money, maybe another year or so of money. I think I'd hate to talk for him, but no.
He did say it.
Yeah, he did say it. I think in his heart he would like to make this a more permanent money. And I also believe that he believes strongly in career technical education. He's our strongest advocate, I think, over there in the legislature. And we still have 2 years to try to bring some of that ROP money back. It's not impossible to do, but hopefully we can. And we just need to spend the next 2 years trying to do that.
Can I just add, I think the best strategy for long-term support, in the same way the partnership academies were supported in the budget, is the full and complete and total engagement of all the parties, including the voc ed teachers. Right, the worst strategy for dealing with what happens with RCPs in 2 years would be to say, we're stepping out of this. Right, I mean that shaping what the systems at the district and the regional level look like through this Career Pathways Trust is going to be in many ways the most powerful way to influence that ultimate outcome. So I'd hope that, and the funds were completely different, right? The $250 million was not subtracted from the amount of money that could potentially be available. I mean, for those of you who are not Prop 98 nerds, I mean, it was a completely different pot of dollars that went into the 250. So they weren't competing, but really the opportunity for vocational education in this environment is for this massive investment to change the world, to change the systems in education and workforce investment and in regions in ways that celebrate and reintegrate vocational education or career tech education into the center once again.
Yeah, so I'm not responsible for the politics in California, but I want to just say something about the ROCP structure and what happens here and in some other states. So here, vocational education is part-time, as I understand it, and separated from the comprehensive high schools. That's not not part-time. Students.
I think it varies a lot.
Okay.
It depends who delivers that.
Okay, so let me start all over again. The point is that many in other states, and probably here some, lots of comprehensive high schools or big high schools do not have much by way of career education. They've focused very heavily on raising standards, meeting test score requirements, and so forth. So I think that this is an opportunity to reconnect what goes on in the ROCPs and the comprehensive high schools. Because in a sense, it's the kids in the comprehensive high schools with no career programs that are losing out. That's something we saw in Boston. We still haven't really solved it. When Massachusetts rose to the top in academic achievement, that was at the cost of career programs in the high school. One of the reasons why Boston is very proud to put 9,000 kids to work in the summer is that they can't integrate, or it's been very difficult to integrate work-based learning back into the high schools, our regular high schools, because there's no infrastructure for it any longer. So the point I'm making is part of this refreshing, reframing, rethinking is reconnecting these disparate parts, and some of it is it's the kids in the schools without career programs who are now suffering from the loss.
Okay, so I think we're right at 3 o'clock or a little bit after, so maybe we could take one more question. Just make it easy. No? Okay, don't have any. So I just want to thank everybody for attending. I hope that what you gained today is valuable to you, and you take it back and do the good things you need to do to help our students. Thank you for attending. And also, I want to thank Josh and Nancy and Chris and Bob for joining us today. I think the information you shared is very valuable to us. Thank you.